let's just get the most important thing out of the way. Patience and Patience 2 do not increase the chance of catching big fish. They don't. That myth has stuck around for too long. They don't. But they do help you catch large size fish. So Patience and Patience 2 are two skills in the Fisher's kit that have a myriad of uses, more so with Patience 2 than Patience, well, or I might say Patience 1, but really it's just Patience. But what they effectively do is they increase the likelihood of catching a large size fish. Now, please note that that is the quality, not like big fish, which a lot of people think. It was confusing for a while. People thought that you don't need to use Patience 2 to catch big fish. But it does help with big fish. But this comes at the cost of normal hook becoming more likely to fail, more likely for the fish to get away if you just use normal hook. You get a debuff when you use Patience 2 called inefficient hooking. This debuff reduces the chance of hook being successful, and to nullify it, you have to use precision and or powerful hook set. So going back to first inefficient hooking, this debuff is the amount that it makes the fish likely to get away varies between Patience 1 and Patience 2. A lot of people are like, what is the difference between the two besides duration? For Patience, it's less likely that the fish is to get away if you use normal hook, and this applies to like double hook and triple hook, but also it is less likely that the fish you catch is going to be a large-sized fish. Patience 2 has a much higher chance of hook, double hook, and triple hook failing, and by connection also has a higher chance of the fish being large size, to the point where you can effectively guarantee large sized, again the quality, fish bites over a certain perception rating, which is usually really easy to get. Don't worry about melding to it if you're in current gear. But it does you can basically use it to guarantee a large size fish. This is also tied in with another buff that you get with Patience 2 that makes those fish even larger. A little bit larger, and I'm not going to go into like how the size scaling works, because you would think size scaling is relatively simple, and to a degree it really is. Like, you just get randomly assigned a fish size, and there's a range of sizes that the fish can be in, but there's a lot of fishes that we don't know how big they get. Like, a lot of the fish, sizes have little asterisks next to them, because we're pretty certain this is big, and we're pretty certain this is the max size, and then someone comes out and it's like 1/10 of an ilm longer, and we're like, oh well, crap. Like that actually happened this morning. So it's so Patience helps increase the size of the fish, of any fish that is caught. So instead of it being like on the lower end of that side, it becomes, on the higher end, to the point where it's like large size quality. This is useful in, like in a handful of places. And it started back in Heavensward, despite Patience being a like level 15 skill now. It actually used to be in the mid 50s, because both Patience and Patience 2 were added in Heavensward as skills to address the fact that when you fished, In Realm Reborn, you had no control over whether or not the fish you caught was large-sized, because it was random. That's where a lot of these early RNG complaints about fishing comes up, and that's a whole other thing about, that's a whole other like deep current of mythos from Fisher, is all stemming from this older Fisher that just keeps carrying through. But anyways, now you can, with Patience and Patience 2, you can now guarantee that fish are going to be large size or have a higher chance of it, which is cool. And originally the hook sets were actually much more expensive. They were two different values, and they were really added in Heaven's Word to address that bit of friction that Fisher had back in Realm Reborn when dealing with mooches. It also added in a better way to work on collectibles, which is one of the first big uses that people, if you're just starting Fisher, or if you think back on when you were starting Fisher, that's one of the first times people will start using Patience, is if not in ocean fishing, it's going to be with collectibles. They're going to be using Patience, because with collectibles, the larger the size of the fish, the higher the tier collectible it is, and the more script you get. So Patience 2, for, quite a very long time, even now, is the go-to skill for when you're going for collectible farming. Going for Zogre Condors, you're using Patience 2. Going for Fleeting Brand, Patience 2. Thunderbolt Eels, Patience 2. Like, you basically have to use this skill to be efficient with collectibles. So that was like the first use that a lot of people see with collectibles. The other use is leveling during ocean fishing. Is probably the other first time you'll see it. Because large size fish get double points, that gives you more. It gives you more points, which gives you more experience. They also give more experience because they're large size. Like, that's the other time that a lot of people see it now. But back in the day, the first time that you would really utilize Patience a lot was during collectibles. Now, so it's ocean fishing. They've also been used a few times in big fish strategies. Patience 1 for the longest time, up until Endwalker. It was basically required that you use Patience, not Patience 2. You would use Patience to get your large-sized rock salt fish to mooch, because rock salt fish bit so often. You could usually get at least one rock salt fish under, one large-sized rock salt fish under Patience 2 in Stormblood, because that's when Mooch 2 was added as well, so you'd use it on cooldown, or while Mooch 2 was on cooldown. But you would use Patience, get a large-sized rock salt fish, or back then high quality, but get a large-sized rock salt fish, wait for Patience to fall off, because Patience 1 has a 60-second duration, Patience 2 has a 145-second duration, and then you would mooch that rock salt fish, you would use double hook. That actually kind of made it really kind of fun, like very, very interesting, and why I still think old Stethacanthus was one of the most interesting, if not one of the best designed, big and or legendary fish in the game. But that's another topic. So you used to see it in strategies like that, where if you needed to get multiple off of a mooch, say you were farming Titanic Sawfish, you would use Patience to get to the to the wahoo, and then you would wait for it to fall off, mooch out. Same thing with various other fish. But that's usually what Patience is used for nowadays. Is like little things in the modern kit, as in like the Dawn Trail kit. I'm recording this a week before 7.55. Um, Patience doesn't really see much use in the high level play anymore. At least a high level like fishing for big fishing. You'll use it until you unlock Patience 2. You'll use Patience, until you unlock Patience 2. You should be using it ocean fishing before level 60 if you don't have Patience 2 unlocked. But you don't need to use Patience anymore because you have prize catch at, later levels. You have Patience 2, which for most cases, collectibles, mooch loops. I'll talk about that in a second. You use Patience 2 for those, and so prize catch kind of killed a little bit of Patience, but also Patience 2 kind of just killed Patience. It's one of those things where it's like, I would not be surprised if in Evercold, as part of the button reduction, they'd make a trait that just automatically upgrades Patience 1 into Patience 2 after the completion of the quests that you would typically have unlocked Patience 2 at. Because I think that just would make sense. You don't really see Patience 1 used anymore. So, yeah, so there's that. But, yeah, so I'm talking about like all these different strategies, and Patience is, the Patiences has probably aged maybe sort of the best, specifically Patience 2. I think Patience 2 is probably the one that's aged better. Patience 1, again, has kind of just fallen out of use because you don't really need it until you hit Patience 2. Because, though, for both the Patiences, they synergize really well with other skills. And that's gotten better. So one of the reasons that you might see yourself using Patience or Patience 2 is through mooching. Mooching, for those who are unaware, is the act of catching a fish, and then you use that fish as bait to catch another fish. And in some cases, that second fish you then cast back out, and that becomes another mooch. And in some cases, it becomes, that fish becomes a third mooch. There's only a couple of fish that have a 3-fish mooch chain. I think that's Greater Serpent of Varanka with Clown Tetra, Uriops, Prisav, Lakwa, and Greater Serpent of Varanka, and then Frilled Shark, which is Gobi Wahoo Squid Frilled Shark, I think. I forget. I should have looked that up. But yeah. But there's only a handful of mooch chains that are like that. The other thing that you'll probably use it for is mooch loops. So this is a relatively cannibalistic thing, where a fish will mooch into itself. For example, Ruby Dragon. You catch a cure. A cure, when you mooch it out, can bite either into a Ruby Dragon, rarely. I think the rate right now is like 1 in 50, maybe 1 in 75. And then more likely it's going to mooch into another cure, which ecologically means that cure eat each other, which is not weird. Like, that actually happens in real life. I mean, not with cures, because those are technically fictional fish, but fish, fish will sometimes eat each other. But I'm getting sidetracked here. Mooch loops are where you will see Patience get used because you need to continually be catching large-sized fish in order to mooch, because you can only use mooch 2, which allows you to mooch an average-sized fish, once every 120 seconds or so. So you can't, if you need to consistently be mooching every 15, 20, 30 seconds, that's not really going to work. So you use Patience 2. For the most part, you'll be using Patience 2 to catch a large-sized fish, cast out, catch another large-sized fish, cast that out, and just keep that loop going. That is a mooch loop. There are cases, though, where if you are mooching, you aren't going to be using Patience 2 just as a bit of a side tangent. like those cases are usually when you have rare mooches, fish that aren't very likely to bite, but are also easily identifiable. So, for example, you would use prize catch on when you're going for Lystracanthus, because you can easily identify Jaws of the Undeath. And Jaws of the Undeath is rare. It is a fish that is easily identifiable by what its bite time. Like, you don't need to a little bit of work, and you can figure out exactly when it's going to bite. It doesn't bite very often, and so it's not like GP wise economical to maintain patience too, though that is what we did back in the day, back in my day. But nowadays you just use prize catch, because that also guarantees a large size fish that in its own right has some weird mechanics tied to it, but that's like more content, more discussions. But you wouldn't be using patience too if you have access to prize catch on, say, Lystracanthus, because you can identify it. It's a whole lot more economical to spend 200 GP to get the prize catch, and then reel in the bite is going to be Jaws of the Undeath, than it is to spend like 550, 600 GP on just patience 2 that you might not use. So you're not going to use patience 2 or patience for all the mooches, but fish like Jaws of the Undeath you would be. For those fish where you can't identify the fish and you're going to have to be reeling in a lot of different bites, for example, with Punity Pain, you're going to be reeling in a lot of strong bites looking for that Hunu peacock bass. Prize catch doesn't make sense, because you're going to be basically reeling in almost every bite that you get. Spending 200 GP every cast for prize catch doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to spend. It's probably going to cost you like 700 GP for the whole duration, maybe 750. With patience 2, plus you're going to be getting Angler's Art stacks back. It makes a whole lot more sense to use patience 2 and expend the hooks at cost to reel it in, because it's just think of patience 2 as like a catch-all net. When it comes to mooching, it's like, I don't know what I need to catch, so I'm going to reel in everything. Patience makes more sense. If it's like a direct line of like, this is exactly what I'm going to catch and I know exactly what I'm going to catch, then you would use prize catch. This isn't a talk about prize catch though, but you kind of get the idea. I hope you kind of get the idea. The patience is, and I'm primarily referring to patience 2 at this point, because again, patience 1 doesn't really fit into the whole kit that well anymore after you unlock patience 2 and you have enough GP to maintain it. I think that's the other thing too, is if you have enough GP, then it makes sense. So by level 100, when you can have 1,000 or 1,100 GP, patience 2 becomes just a drop in the bucket. You have more GP than, almost probably twice as much GP than you would have had back in A Realm Reborn Heaven's Word when it first came out, so it makes way more sense to use patience 2. But patience 2 synergizes really, really well with other skills, so specifically around mooching. Spareful Hand is the easy go-to if you are catching a fish and you're going to be consistently catching a moochable fish. For prep, you can use patience 2, because you'll get Angler's Art stacks. You'll be able to get the fish you need to mooch, and then you just use Spareful Hand to store it. Fish like Iron Oxydorus, Takatoa, that's going to be relevant. Theoretically, with Ruby Dragon, you could do it. Ruby Dragon's a bit of a weird case. If you're taking the long prep, which is you do all your prep before the cure window, you wouldn't be using patience 2 in the cure window from midnight to 4 a.m. But if you show up late, you may end up using patience 2, because you're going to be reeling in more fish regardless, to build up those Angler's Art stacks while you're catching cures. That's also a very valid strategy, and one that I would recommend for someone who's been to a few Ruby Dragon windows to get an idea of what to do, but not a Ruby Dragon strategy video. Wait for that one. The main thing, though, to know is if you're going to be catching a lot of fish, you use Patience 2, especially if you'll be mooching. If you are going to be more precise and specific on the fish that you're going to catch and it isn't super common, then you'd be using Prize Catch. But that's a whole other thing. So, kind of this last thing, or one of the last things that Patience 2 uses that I see a lot of people not recognize, even though it's been technically out for almost 2 whole expansions now, is when you are dealing with mooch loops. We say, use Patience 2 because you're going to be constantly mooching over and over again. If you're going for, Ruby Dragon is one example, Naboth Saw, Ninja Beta, all these are fish that loop into other fish, and you're going to be consistently catching and consistently mooching. And one of the important things about that is maintaining the length of that loop. With Patience 2, there is a really nice synergy with Makeshift Bait. So if you're starting from nothing and you have, you get your first mooch, you can cast out, you reel it in, you gain an Angler's Art stack. You could, in theory, keep using Patience 2, store Spareful Hand, or store a fish with Spareful Hand, refresh Patience 2, because using Patience 2 while you are waiting for mooch, as in waiting, if you have a mooching opportunity, if one of your mooch skills is available to be used, if you use Patience 2, that availability is removed, it is canceled. What you can do is you can circumvent that by using Spareful Hand, store the fish, re-up Patience 2, and then, select the fish again and keep going. Or you can use the Angler's Art stacks that you were building with Patience 2 and use Makeshift Bait. You can then you can use Makeshift Bait without breaking any mooching opportunities. This is a thing that I think a lot of people miss, is when you're doing a mooch loop, you can start with Patience 2 if you don't have a lot of Angler's Art stacks. Build those Angler's Art stacks up while you are in the loop. And then when Patience 2 falls off, or you're about to use Mooch 2, use Makeshift Bait. And then mooch out as normal, and all the fish after that will be moochable. Because what Makeshift Bait does is it doesn't make fish large sized, it just makes them usable with Mooch 1 regardless of their size. And with Mooch, or with Makeshift Bait, you actually you're not using any GP. It's like with Patience, you have to spend the GP to use Patience, or Patience 2, and then you have to spend GP to get to use the hook sets. With Makeshift Bait, you're just using, Makeshift Bait and hook, neither of which costs you GP technically, at least directly. So this synergy actually works out on fish that can have notoriously long loops. Naboth Saw can have kind of longer loops. I've seen Ninja Beta go kind of long, but usually it breaks with a bite. And then Assassin Beta actually I think is what it is. My bad. Ninja is the minion. Assassin Beta is the big that you get the minion from. But I have done this on Horned King in the River of Sand, where you can just start with Patience 2, you get a bunch of Angler's Art stacks, you use Makeshift Bait, you let your GP regen, you use Patience 2 again. It's when you start to use Patience 2 again, you'll have to use Spareful Hand to store it, but the other synergy is Makeshift Bait procs Spareful Hand regardless of size. So on that last mooch, that last large size mooch you're going to get, you can just use Spareful Hand, use Patience 2, cast back out, and you're good to go. So it synergizes well, and I think because of these synergies that we see with some of these more recent skills in Endwalker and Dawntrail, we're actually like Patience, and both Patiences really, though by just use Patience 2, is probably like they've aged really well for being Heaven's Word skills. Because they haven't changed a ton compared to them, especially Patience 2. Like the biggest change for Patience 2 was I think duration, a little bit of cost, and the hook set cost change. Patience 1 got thrown all the way down into level 15. Chum also came out in Heaven's Ward. That's now a level. Yeah, that's a very low level skill. But Patience 2 has lasted, somewhat unchanged, but notably like it has changed, but it has only changed not as much relative to the others, I should probably say. But like they're still aging quite well. And I think the kit for Fisher really complements these moochable fish now. So it works really well. Like I think the patience skills are very nice to use is probably the crux of this all. So yeah, I've already touched on collectibles with Patience 2. I don't know if I've said it directly, but if you are going for collectibles and the fish isn't a rare bite, which I think of all the rare biting fish, they're mooches. So you'd be using Patience 2 anyways. So yeah, if you're going for collectibles, use Patience 2. I think there's a few exceptions with like the remember in Ed Walker we had the Sublime like prime tier collectibles. We had those for fish as well. Those you could use prize catch on. But for everything else, if you're going for like condors, you're going for groupers, copper shark, you could use Patience 2. Those are all fine. It's pretty versatile in that sense. But if you're going for collectibles, Patience 2 is a safe bet to start with, and for what you're going for. But overall, I think, like I said, I think the Patience skills have really aged well in the kit. There are two skills that I think, at least Patience 2 has aged well. I think Patience 1, let me amend myself. Patience 1, I don't know what it does right now outside of being a leveling thing. It's the stopgap to Patience 2, and truly, if they were to do the button reduction that I really think needs to come in Evercold, we could see Patience and Patience 1 get merged into a single Patience and then upgraded at a trait or via a trait at level 60, which is when you would get Patience 2 normally. I think that would make a ton of sense to me. But otherwise, they're still very useful skills, even when you don't have Patience 2. Like Patience is still very useful in place of Patience 2 for if you're big fishing for some odd reason without Patience 2. Like it's just if you're at level 50 and you're like, I want to go big fishing with a realm reborn fish, Patience 2 really, really helps with a lot. Or sorry, Patience 1 really, really helps a lot with those realm reborn fish and some of those Heaven's Word fish as well. So overall, Patiences, they're great. Again, they don't help you. They do not increase the bite rate of big fish at all. If I see somebody using Patience 2 or Patience at a straight catch big fish, I am going to correct you because you really don't need them. So that's all for now. Have a good rest of your week. Good luck and happy fishing.